It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Happy Labor Day. Hope everyone has had and is having a wonderful Labor Day. I know a lot of people think the end of summer, beginning of fall, and all that stuff. But Labor Day, a little special to us here at the program. This, our 19th anniversary. We started this little program back on Labor Day of 2005 and have been growing and doing this little thing ever since then. And look, the reality, over these last 19 years, lots of changes, lots of swings politically, lots of attacks on organized labor. But the one thing that's been constant is here at the program, we've been saying, look, this is how lives get better. It's been my personal experience. So I'm simply sharing what I've learned over my lifespan, what I've seen others go through. And you know, I was digging through some stuff on my desk, and I came across my grandfather's old union contract from 1967. And, you know, it's quite a read because understand the beginning of what was really, you know, the power that the Teamsters especially had in the trucking industry, taking shape, making lives better. And I went and did the little Bureau of Labor Statistics calculator. And way back in 1967, under the Central States tanker truck agreement, my grandfather was making $3.50 an hour. You do that little thing though, and it's like almost $34 an hour now. A wage that someone could live on. Plus, that was the hourly wage. Plus, there was drop and hook stuff, and there was waiting time. There's all kinds of stuff that went into this. Which, and overtime that made lives, you know, my grandfather worked a ton of overtime. But as I was flipping through the book, you know, you go and you think about what this union has meant to people like my grandfather, the friendships, the relationships. And in the back, you know, is a list of all the guys he worked with, all their phone numbers, you know, and little notes about them all, which, you know, this just a priceless little bit of history. Which led me to my own contract. I hold the master freight agreement contract here on my desk, the last one that's available. And, you know, you go, how did this go from, you know, ensuring that we write down what the job description is, what's expected of everybody from here to a book about this size that lays out, you know, all of the advancements in working conditions for working people. Air conditioning being one of those things that we've been talking a lot about here recently with the developments at UPS, something that the freight drivers dealt with a couple of decades ago. And in there, you know, I came across my original union card from 1989 in Cleveland, local 293. April 24th of 1989 is when I got my first union card. And I think back to what this card has meant. And of course, in my contract, I've not just my original one, but my current one. Yeah. Local here. And I think about what that card has meant, what this contract has meant. And on Labor Day, it's one of these things that I think about quite often, about how both of these contracts, the one my grandfather worked under, the one that I've worked under, has made lives better. My grandfather and my grandmother went from being basically homeless and getting married for the old-fashioned reason because they had to, and thus being thrown to the curb because that's what happened back then, to leading a life of dignity, a solidly middle-class existence, and retiring and living out their golden years in their own homes with the kind of dignity and respect that all of us should want and demand. And that was made possible by this contract. It was made possible by the fact that their lives got better because of the work that my grandfather did. And eventually my grandmother, once the kids were grown, she went into the workplace, got a job at a small department store in Cleveland, a union job, UFCW Local 880. And they built a solid middle-class existence for themselves. And when they retired, they both got pensions. My grandfather from the Teamsters Union and my grandmother from UFCW Local 880. And it was that part of that three-legged stool, the defined benefit pension, their savings, and that Social Security that made their lives better. And it's the kind of working class story that can be told millions and millions of times across this country. Not unique, not unnatural, not normal for their generation. Something people, I think, need to remember, come back to. And I think about myself. I think about the things that union card has afforded me. I grew up in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland. I grew up in poverty. The cupboards were empty at the end of the month. There was violence. There was destruction. Our house was robbed probably 20, 30 times. I can't even keep count. But it saw some really horrible stuff. People shot, stabbed, beaten, all of that. And that union card made it possible for my kids to never have to see that kind of stuff. And, you go, what are you grateful for on this Labor Day? That's it. For me personally, it's that story that I don't ever have to look into my children's eyes and know that they're hungry and there's nothing I can do. I don't ever have to look into their eyes, and haven't had to, and know that they're hurt and I can't afford medical care. That they have to worry about had to worry about where they're going to lay their head. And I'm not saying this because, as a braggart, because I've had some people go, oh, you're just bragging. No, I'm saying this as the reason I believe what I do so strongly is because this is what's worked for me. It may not be for everybody, but every working person should have a contract, should have the terms of their employment laid out in black and white, should have the wages, the conditions, the hours, everything right there. Sadly, far too many. In fact, only 10% of workers are in unions and have contracts, which means there are a lot of people who don't. A lot of people who have insecurity, a lot of people who are worried about if they're going to get fired tomorrow for no reason. A lot of people who don't know what their coworkers are making to compare what they're worth. In this book, lays it out. Don't care if you're a man, woman. Don't care if you're gay, straight. Don't care if you're black, white. Don't care what you are. You do the job, you get these wages. You get these conditions. You get these benefits. It's all on the table. And this is what we should be demanding in this moment because, look, corporate America has gone too far. The pendulum swung way too far in the side of corporate power to where they were actually and have actually fired people because they had the audacity to ask a coworker, hey, how much are you making? How much are they paying you? Because that secrecy, that cloak of darkness, that's how they make their profits. And for me, the idea of collective bargaining, the idea of fighting for better wages, hours, conditions for everybody is the way we make lives better. So on this Labor Day, it's about the work we do. It's about the dignity of the work we do. It's about being rewarded for the work that we do in a way that we're able to support our families. But it's also, more importantly, the respect, the dignity that we have in ourselves and our ability to ensure that our kids don't go hungry. Our kids don't have to worry where they're going to lay their heads, that they don't have to worry that their communities are violent, that they don't have to worry about tomorrow, and that maybe they look to tomorrow with great optimism and hope. Because for me, the one thing that I give my union, and look, I've been a Teamster for a very long time. The one thing I give them ultimate credit for is the work that I've done has been compensated at a fair level. And every minute of it has been compensated. And it's given me the security to make choices and to do things that maybe I wouldn't have done otherwise. This little gig here, for instance. So for me, on this holiday, I want to thank my Teamsters Union. I want to thank union leaders across this country and union members who fought, who bled, and some who died for our right to collective bargaining, our right to demand better. And it's important to remember in this day, this did not come easy. This did not come easy. This, what my grandparents fought for, did not come easy. What we need to do is pick up this legacy of our grandparents and our parents' generation and move it forward and expand, regrow the labor movement, because I believe, as I said, this is the way that we reunite this country. And when we come back, I'm going to have Fred Redmond, Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO, here on the program. While the Democratic Convention was going on, we sat down with Fred. And, well, when we come back, we will play that interview with Fred Redmond, Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO. You miss any portion of the program? I want to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell me your story on this Labor Day. Has this card meant something to you? Did it make lives better? And do you agree with me from my cold, dead hand? rick@thericksmithshow.com. Right back.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as we've been talking about this, the most pro-labor convention of my lifetime, as I've been saying, the Democratic Party finally coming home to labor and to working people, and about time. And that's why I've asked our good friend Fred Redmond to come sit down with us, share some thoughts on what we've seen, what we're going to see, and maybe where things head from here. Fred Redmond is the Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO. Fred, thanks for taking time for us.
Good to be with you, Rick.
So, what do you think of this? What's your opening thoughts?
Well, I agree with you in terms of this is one of the most pro-union conventions that I've seen in my lifetime. And, the fact of the matter, Rick, is for years, the Democratic Party has viewed organized labor as a special interest group. We're not a special interest group. We promote mainstream ideas that the Democratic Party can run on and win. We're talking about people sharing in the wealth that they help to create. We're talking about access to health care. We're talking about safety and health on the job. So I'm glad to see that the Democratic Party is adopting the issues that the labor movement have long advocated for. We're moving into, particularly under this administration, or we're moving past being looked at as a special interest group, and we're being looked at as a key component of the Democratic Party. And that's refreshing.
No, absolutely. And so the question that I have then is this because of Joe Biden and his leadership? Is this because of the moment that we're in coming out of the pandemic? Is it because labor has been a little more muscular? Where do you put that?
Well, I think it's a little bit of all of that. I think that in 2022 and 2020, we had a huge amount of victories on the state level, on the federal level, for people that ran on labor value.
Right.
For people that supported the PRO Act, candidates who got in there and talked about fair wages, and candidates that promoted our agenda was successful in 2022. So I think it's an awakening of the Democratic Party that these are winning issues. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And then I think that the Republicans, their issues are so far right and so extremist, that I think that the Democratic Party has learned that, working people issues is a winner.
No, absolutely. And if you look at that Project 2025, I'm sure you have seen it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
There's nothing good in there for working people.
Nothing good in there for working people. And I would encourage your listeners, if you go to our website, it's betterintheunion.com, then we have a link for Project 2025 that's very simplistic, user-friendly. You can open up the link, and whatever aspect of 2025 you want to look at, we got tabs on there where you can look up civil and human rights, you can look at, retirement security, and it directs you to the actual 2025 project and tell you, the position on whatever issue that you're interested in. But Project 2025 is a manifesto. It's the direction of the Republican Party, and there's nothing good in there for working people.
No, and it's a document that, if you read it, it's a whole lot of horrible, but it's all about returning us to the good old days of the 80s and 90s.
That's right.
And not the 1980s and 90s.
That's right. That's right. There's nothing in there that would really, really promote a new direction of work, a progressive society that would progress the ideas that workers promote and workers advocate for. It's about taking us back.
Yeah.
It's about taking us back to the Jim Crow era. It's about taking us back when workers didn't have a voice on the job. It's about really, really creating an autocracy as opposed to a democracy, and it's the playbook on how to get there.
Well, it's all about taking us back to the Gilded Age, obviously.
That's right.
And
That's
the reason I bring that up is because I have a lot of folks who are saying Republicans are trying to make a play for working people. And I'm not seeing it. I know there's been some lip service over the last several years of how certain people are now claiming to be worker friendly, but I haven't seen one Republican name on the PRO Act, for instance. There may be some rhetoric, but I don't see any actions.
A lot of rhetoric, no action. And I think that the interview that the former president did with Elon Musk really spells it out. You got two billionaires holding a discussion, making fun of firing people and joking about firing people on strike. And I imagine those sort of conversations take place at Mar-a-Lago every day, but the Republican Party has really lost touch with the working class, and they have a candidate, that's really, really expressing, whose side is he on.
How big of a deal is that? I mean, because I've had these conversations with some of my union buddies, and I said, look, to me, that's a fundamental thing. That's a fundamental thing of being part of a union, is having the arrow in your quiver of being able to strike. You may never go through your life and have a strike. Like, I've been a union member 35 years. I've been on strike one time.
Yeah.
But I didn't fear that they were going to be able to fire me for no reason.
Right.
And without negotiating, like Trump laid out.
Right. I mean, it's frustrating in a way from our point of view, because their playbook is laid out. It's for the public to see. And what we're trying to do, Rick, in this election cycle, first of all, we're going to have the largest ground game in the history of the American labor movement, and we're going back to old school tactics. We're not going to talk to our members immediately about D's, R's, and independence. We're talking to them about the issues.
Right.
The issues and the position of the Republican Party, the issues of the Democratic Party. And we really believe that once people know who's on their side, who's on the side of the everyday working person, that they will vote the right way. Now, unfortunately, we got members in the working class who have drunk the Kool-Aid, and they're going to continue to vote on their guns and, vote against their stance on abortion and those sort of issues. But there seem to be more and more, of labor union members that's coalescing around a progressive agenda that support working people and working families.
Right. No, because look, I think we're all struggling. I mean,
that's right.
Everyone's tightening the belt. Everyone's feeling the pain, so to speak. The paycheck isn't stretching as far as it should.
Right.
And this idea that we can fight for better wages, hours, conditions, that we can do better by organizing in the workplace, I think people are coming around to that because it's possible. And I give credit for that to Joe Biden. By doing what, and I've been saying this for months now, the Biden administration has made it like my grandparents' generation. The government was encouraging people to collectively bargain. That's the law, and I think that has helped a little bit.
That has helped. I mean, when you got a president, first of all, who enjoy, not that he's just not afraid, but he enjoyed using the word union. And he really, really believes in his core, okay, that unions help build the middle class. And the only way that we're going to get ahead is by building the middle class from the middle up, from the bottom up, not from the top down. And, you know, it's one of those sort of things, Rick, where, you know, people are getting fed up. Look, the question to ask is, if a loaf of bread, you know, prior to the pandemic, if a loaf of bread costs $3, now it costs $5, the question people got to ask is, where are the other $2 going? And, you know, what this is about is price gouging. We think that the Vice President Harris is right on point when we talk about they want to paint it as some sort of, you know, communist scheme. But you have to ask, why are the prices going up? When you look at the agri companies and you look at the food producers, you know, the workers in those industries, their pay haven't risen, you know, but their stock and their profit margin have went skyrocketing. So what they're doing is they're taking advantage of the prices, you know, during COVID. You know, they raised the prices because there was a shortage in terms of getting the food to the market, and now they're continuing to do that. So I think that Vice President Harris is on the right track.
Yeah.
The Biden administration set the pace. But that's the question that people have to ask. When you're paying more for commodities, for goods and service, then you have to ask why. And that's the fundamental question. One thing that we know, that money is not going to the workers.
And that's because I would argue at 6% of the private sector and 10% of the overall economy, labor isn't as muscular as they should be.
That's right. You
know, we're at 35% union density.
Yeah.
This is a different ballgame because I go back to the 70s when my grandfather, I think it was 75, got 3 raises during the year because his cost of living adjustment ensured that his wages didn't get eroded away by inflation. That was his contract that did that.
That's right. But, you know, over the last 2 years, Rick, really led by the UAW, we have seen increase in wages that we haven't seen in decades, okay? We've seen raises increase in some industries.
No, look at my Teamsters union.
Right,
like UPS got a great raise.
Right, and the auto workers, but, you know, there's not enough of that. So what we got to do is continue to hold folks accountable. We got to push back on any sort of continuation of tax cuts to the wealthiest people in this country. And we have to really, really get about establishing policy, collective bargaining on behalf of our members in order to build a middle class that could sustain a family and, you know, family supporting jobs. So that's what we're about. We do see some improvement, but we still got a long way to go.
And we still need legislative help.
Absolutely.
So in looking at this ticket, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, initial thoughts?
Great ticket. I mean, you know, the thing about it is the Vice President Harris has been with the Biden administration. She cast the deciding vote on numerous pieces of legislation that have helped working people, the legislation that really saved pensions in this country. You know, she was the tie-casting vote. And then Tim Walz, I mean, the things that he have done in Minnesota, if he, you know, to advocate some of the things he put together in Minnesota, you know, such as increase to the minimum wage, you know, such as
ending captive audience meetings, feeding children.
Absolutely.
How dare we?
That's right. That's right. And I want to quote Governor Walz. If those are the sort of things, okay, that call you an extreme liberal, then we welcome that moniker of extreme liberal. But this is about, you know, this is about new workers coming into the workplace. And Rick, I'm so pleased to see the energy amongst younger folks, younger workers coming. You know, when we look at Starbucks, when we look at some of the campaigns that have really taken off over the last year, these campaigns is being engineered, they're being ran by younger workers. The younger workers are saying enough is enough, you know. I want to work one job where I can support my family, raise my children.
Because they've all heard the stories.
That's right.
They've all heard the stories. Grandma and grandpa could survive on one income.
One income. That's right. That's right.
And do it well.
That's right. So there's some good things happening in the labor movement. We're growing. record number of, record number of organizing victories. We still got work to do, in terms of achieving first contracts. We have to really, really get the PRO Act passed. We got to nationally outlaw captive audience meetings, but, it's a work in progress. But
does all that end if Trump's elected?
I think it does. I think it all does.
Because they've said in their Project 2025, they basically want to eliminate you.
Oh, yeah. If Trump is elected, I expect that we'll hear debates in this country about national right to work. I think that, and look, that's part of their playbook. I think that we're going to really look at the elimination of the Affordable Care Act and other pieces of legislation that have helped workers. Because what they're trying to do is to go back. All we got to do is look at his first term in office.
Yep.
How he gave tax breaks to the billionaires, and they're looking to continue that practice. So we have to work like our lives depend on it because
they do.
That's right.
Sadly, they do. So last question I've got for you, you got like 70 some days between now and Election Day. What's the message you're throwing out there?
First of all, the message that we're throwing out there is, number one, is better in the union. And we're looking at, we have to make sure that the PRO Act passed. That's our major piece of legislation. We think that more workers deserve the right to collective bargaining, and those workers that want to join a union, bargain collectively, they shouldn't have to put their jobs on the line. We want a permanent extension of the child tax credit, which lifted, millions of children out of poverty. And we also want to pass the Joe Lewis Act to make sure that we already litigated that case on voting rights for every American. We can't go back there where, we continue to see an expansion of voter suppression laws. So, we got work to do. And my message to workers is this, okay? It really comes down to us versus them. It's what kind of America we want to have.
Which side are you on?
And which side is you on? And that's where we at in this election. And that's why we're going to work like hell. We're going to talk to working people, and we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that the 45th president never returns to the White House.
There you go. Fred Redmond, I appreciate the time. Good stuff.
Rick. Thank you.
Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So for longtime listeners, viewers, or just last week, or the week before, actually, you'll recognize my next guest who has been a weekly feature on the program, talking about trade with China, talking about reshoring manufacturing, talking about actually building stuff in the U.S. Grabbed him here at the convention hall, said, sit, we got to talk. That's why I'm glad our good friend Scott Paul has made his way here to Chicago. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it is so great to be with you in person.
Absolutely.
For a change, man.
Good
It's
stuff.
awesome. Yeah.
Thoughts? What we seeing?
Yeah. First of all, I love this building as a Chicago Bulls fan. Watched them in my prime.
Jordan right over there?
I showed my kids the Jordan statue when they were so they've been well aware of him. It's great to see Steve Kerr come back to the house last night. There's a lot of energy here. We're obviously nonpartisan. We don't endorse candidates, but when we're invited to go places, we do. And we've been in the past at both conventions. And so it's been a great experience, and I've been very gratified to hear so many of the speakers talk about the middle class, working class issues, talk about the resurgence in manufacturing and not to cede that ground. And obviously these are issues that we work on. And so that, that's both, I guess, in a way, reassuring, validating, but I think it also reflects an understanding of, particularly in states like Pennsylvania, in Michigan, Wisconsin, and even in Georgia, I would say, because of the factory boom there, that this is stuff that matters.
No, we had Rokan on the show, and he talked about his Steel Modernization Act and the idea of reshoring manufacturing in a way that we're not going to recreate the 50s and 60s. We're not going to get 100,000 jobs at a factory, but we might get 1,000.
Yeah.
We might get 500. We're going to bring some of this stuff back. We're going to be competitive globally. We're going to encourage smart policy at the federal level, and the inputs like steel are the base of all that.
Yeah, they are. It's one of the foundational resources for our economy. And I know, it's fashionable for the pundits, for the op-ed writers, for the economists to say, well, steel, that was like a century and a half ago. Why should we care about it? And the fact is, when people, and I'm going to sound like a steel evangelist now, but when you look around, everything's made of steel. This arena is made of steel. The cars and buses that got people here, the equipment that we're utilizing, it all has metal in it. And so that has to come from somewhere. I want it to come from the United States because it means they're going to be good jobs. It's going to be more sustainably made. We're on a path to decarbonizing the steel industry, which will take some investment to do, but this is and needless to say, also this goes into really important stuff in our national security, not to mention our infrastructure, so much of the other public investment that has been made. So it is it continues to be very relevant and in a lot of different places. And in this area in particular, this is, if you count Northwest Indiana, this is the largest steelmaking region in the country right here. So this is kind of the heartbeat of the industry. I want to see it stay strong. I know many of the people who work in the mills, and those are good jobs. It's hard to find jobs like that somewhere else. So, but the fact is, as hard as they work, as efficient as the companies are, if you don't have a level playing field and there's a lot of cheating going on and you're not investing, you're going to lose those jobs.
Yeah, this is where it comes back to policy, comes back to who's where. But as you're talking to people about these issues, you've been to a lot of these conventions over the years. Is this an issue that is front and center on the minds of the people here? Do you think that, or is this always on their mind?
Yeah.
Now different, now the same. Where are we?
Well, I think, as you know, and we can look at both parties here, and the Democratic Party is certainly a party of coalitions, and so I'm sure, as you heard, there are screams when we talk about reproductive freedom, or when you talk about gun safety, or when you talk about education, or when you talk about democracy or whatever, and they all have kind of a core audience that expands out from that. But one thing I think that people universally agree on is that need to lean into good jobs,
right.
and that while it's not I'm trying to think of a way to put this. It's not really like a sound bite in the way some other things can be. The fact that what the policies that the Biden-Harris administration was able to put into place in a short amount of time are going to transform our economy in a good way for a couple of decades. And I said this at an event earlier today. I said, look, I know that everybody's concerned about the next 80 days or so, and that's great. That's their jobs. That's the political party's jobs to do it. One thing that I think we'll all step back and take a look at, or our ancestors 30, 50 years from now, is how transformational this period of time was for our economy in the United States. And in the way that, say, the Erie Canal was, or the Transcontinental Railroad, or land-grant colleges, or the arsenal of democracy, or the interstate highway system, or the space race, and all the innovation that that brought about. And I have to stop at that point because there hasn't been anything since then. And now we do have this turbocharged effort to both rebuild manufacturing and to decarbonize at the same at the same time. And that is a massive transformational undertaking. And, we'll have the results in 30 to 50 years. I mean, God willing. Yeah, God willing, I'll see one of those, but not both. But but I think that's got to be a legacy. And look, people aren't going to appreciate this over the next couple of months. But I mean, to me, this is something that you're sometimes not aware of history unless you're, when you're living in it, except for if there's a traumatic event, of course, like 9/11 or January 6th or what have you. So, but I think this is one from a perspective of like, wow, we did this. Look what our country did.
No, we can either do it well,
yeah,
or poorly.
Yeah, that's right.
And look, I see you brought your son with you. Good on you.
Yeah.
I used to drag my kids with me everywhere I went to. Is he enjoying it?
I think he's having the time of his life. I've never seen him so fired up. And he's a rising junior. He loves politics. He's read more about it in his 16 years than I have in my 50-some. And so shame on me. But for him, he's become.
This is the Super Bowl.
Yeah, this is like the Super Bowl, and he's gotten to know a lot of people who I think are very inspiring to him, and that's all I wanted to do was to help him spark some joy, to get some inspiration, and to get him to lead, see if he wanted to lead into these issues, and he's right there.
No, that's cool. That's so cool.
Yeah.
But the other part of this, and the reason I brought it up, is that we want to leave something to our children.
Yeah.
We want to leave something to them worth being left.
That's right. That's right. Rather than a burning planet that we're underinvesting in getting overtaken by authoritarian countries around the world, right?
Or here at home.
Yeah, or here at home. Well, yeah, we don't want that hellscape, right? We want we want to. This is why, I do think that we can, as a country, rise to the occasion and do this and do great things. And when we've been called to do that in the past, we've done it. And I went through
we've met the moment.
The litany of things, Rick, where it was like that. And so, again, the bigger stuff is more of a slow burn here. But I do think that is like, that's good stewardship. And for a lot, too much of our politics is just about, winning the day or winning the hour and not moving the country forward. And so this
a lot
is
of work
something
to do.
We do. But this is something that gives me hope. The semiconductors, the bridges, the solar factories, including one in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, all of that stuff that's happening is truly remarkable, and the fact that it has like a Made in America stamp on it is I think sends a really, really powerful signal, and makes us stronger and gives us more choices as a country moving ahead geopolitically too.
No, you're a labor guy. Labor all over this convention.
Oh yeah. It's great to see. I heard a statistic that I think 20% of the delegates belong to a labor union, and obviously there's been a resurgence in interest in all of this because of how our economy has expanded and how some employers have responded to that. And so I think there is this renewed interest in having worker voice. And look, I think at AAM we're a shining example of how when you do that effectively, you can elicit change, and it can help individuals who are members of the union. It can help society as well. And so we're very committed to that mission.
No, you guys do incredible work, and I'm grateful when you guys come on and share the incredible work that you do with us every week. Scott, as always, incredible seeing you. I hope you enjoy the convention, and I look forward to having you back again in our regular slot.
I can't wait, Rick. Thanks so much for having me on, and enjoy the convention as well. Hope it's an incredibly memorable and productive one.
Good stuff. Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We're going to take a quick break back here in Chicago right after this.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2 on On this day in labor history, the year was 1909. That was the day the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People was founded. During the early years of the 20th century, the NAACP developed legal strategies to challenge anti-black violence and segregation. W.E.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells, Archibald Grimke, and Florence Kelley were just a few of the white and black intellectuals and activists who founded the organization. They sensed the urgency for a civil rights organization in the wake of the 1908 race riot in Springfield, Illinois. They hoped to combat the rapid growth of lynchings and Jim Crow statutes. Membership ballooned to almost 90,000 in less than 10 years, with more than 50 branches nationwide. These leaders opposed the gradualism of Booker T. Washington and fought to convince whites of the need for racial equality. The NAACP investigated lynchings and targeted voter disenfranchisement and segregation through a series of lawsuits. They established a legal defense fund that organized support for the Scottsboro Boys and similar cases. They undertook the campaign to overturn the separate but equal doctrine of Plessy versus Ferguson. This resulted in the 1954 landmark decision, Brown versus Board of Education. The NAACP played a central role in the civil rights movement, with Rosa Parks as its secretary. They helped to organize the Montgomery bus boycott, were centrally involved in the campaign to integrate schools in Little Rock, Arkansas, and mobilized for the 1963 March on Washington for jobs and freedom. They also worked successfully toward the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act. The NAACP continues its important advocacy work today with some 425,000 members.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
You know, I saw this story over at Yahoo Finance. Evidently, there's a new term being thrown around for my generation, Generation X, because we're the generation that got screwed out of defined benefit pensions. I've been fortunate in the job that I've had, has had one, but you know, we're sadly dinosaurs in this world. And I look at my future, my retirement. I have a secure defined benefit pension. I'm going to retire with Social Security. I'm going to retire with a good union pension, and I've saved enough that I'm going to be that three-legged stool pretty strong. But I saw this term for my generation that really is disheartening. This idea of silver squatter, which means that mom and dad are going to be living in their children's basements because they're not going to have the money to retire on. And it said that, you know, the vast majority of my generation not prepared. In fact, I think the number they threw out was something like $50,000 is the average retirement savings for my generation, which is quite frightening because I got to tell you, $50,000 is not going to get you far into retirement, especially as we're looking at Social Security having some problems because we've failed to address them for the last couple of decades. We know what crisis is coming. We've just had politicians who have said, not important. Kick it down the can, down that road. We don't have to worry about it. And this is where politics matters. Who you vote for really, really does matter. So if we're going to deal with crisis for the future, let's start this election cycle. I want to bang through a couple of emails before we wrap up today's Labor Day show. Kevin from Cleveland writes me, Rick, although I'm retired and never belonged to a union in my work, I recently ordered a UAW Eat the Rich baseball cap to wear as a conversation piece. Great conversation piece, by the way. He writes, Amazon has not been able to deliver it for 2 weeks due to the fact the cap is literally on a slow boat from China. He asks, why is this cap not manufactured here by union workers? It's akin to an American flag, not made in America. Just saying. And you don't have to just say, I'll say it for you. It's kind of the same thing. It's something that I've been on for, about 19 years of doing this show. The idea that I grew up as a kid hearing that jingle, the International Ladies Garment Union Workers singing Look for the Union label. Well, it's look for the union bug right there, the union bug. to make sure that your clothing is made by union workers. Usually going to be here. Now, you bought it from Amazon. Quite frankly, very little going to be made in the U.S. from the Amazon stores. So I would suggest if you want something that says UAW on it that is something from the UAW, you should probably go to the UAW website. You're not going to find anything that the UAW, at least I don't think that's going to be UAW approved with their logo and a union bug on it on an Amazon site. Just my thought. Michael from New Jersey writes that he's reading this book, Radium Girls by Kate Moore, suggests that I read it. And he says, look, it reminds him of the long struggle workers faced in service of the industrial barons of old. He says it's well worth a read if you haven't done so. And look, the reality is, it's taken a lot to fight for safe working conditions. And I look forward to that. He says it would make a good spot on the show. Keep up the good work. He says he was in a union all of his life. Recently, TWU working in New Jersey Transit. Good for you, Michael. Nicholas from New York writes, can't find the FDR 1935 tax on the rich talk/speech by Google search, but have heard it. Can you forward the speech in taxing those who made over $5 million and in 1935, 70% of that income taxed? Understand it was defeated by loopholes. Nicholas, it wasn't really a tax speech as it was a come together speech. And I sent the link. It was his April 14th, 1938 fireside chat that I found where he talked about government doing what needs to be done. If private industry won't create enough jobs, then he said, look, we're going to have to do it. And we're going to raise the appropriations needed to ensure that we're able to do it. And it was really a call to taxing the rich without using the word taxing the rich. I'm not afraid to say we need to start taxing the rich again. Because as FDR knew, and I highly suggest looking up this speech, this fireside chat, is he knew, look, the private sector is not going to do what's in the best interest of we the people. Only we are going to be able to do that. And only through government are we going to ensure that especially the least among us are cared for, which is why I was thrilled to see the email from Dennis. Dennis said, you're spot on when you said government's main function is to do what we can do collectively that we cannot be done individually. He says, because of the Republican policies, the TV is full of ads begging for contributions for wounded warriors, T2T, and others that would be government functions with a proper government. He points out that the biggest DNC convention takeaway for labor was Bill Clinton's statement that since 1979, 1 million jobs were created under Republican presidents, while 50 million jobs were created under Democratic presidents. He says any working person who votes for Trump and Republicans is either ill-informed or crazy. He lets me know that he's 80 years old and still going strong, and good on you, Dennis. Many years ahead of you, especially since you agree with me. Thank you so much. Ed from Connecticut goes after Lindsey Graham, says Lindsey Graham, his reasoning that the 13 deaths of military personnel in Afghanistan in 2021 was due to President Biden's incompetence. Does it make Trump's incompetence at 6 times greater for the 75 deaths during his term? No, of course not, because nothing is Donald Trump's fault. I would argue the 13 that were killed coming out of Afghanistan, partially due to Donald Trump's timeline and forcing this to happen. It was his bad deal, Mr. Art of the deal, that this happened under. So for me, yeah, he's responsible, but will the Red Hats think so? No, not at all. Chris, the show, he sends me poets. He's my poet. He sends me poems all the time. He's got one. Trumping humanity, he writes, embracing coercive power with pride and vanity. A living totalitarian mask representing freedom's ending. Owning the libs, challenging all, duping survivors, stepping into their trauma. Feeding from their pain, exploiting their drama. As they agree to be exploited for his higher cause, while he bows to Putin and Bibi and serves the globally incorporated corporate fascists, equality haters, who empower arms races and proliferation of conflict for resource and profits. They have the blood of the fallen on their hands and in their storehouses of gold, and their chosen leader to bury America standing triumphant upon her grave. Wow, heavy stuff, but can you disagree? It is what we're seeing. Tim from Indiana writes, "Sir, I'm an ex-union member, still holding an active union labor card, but Trump is a convicted felon 34 times, draft dodger, bankruptcy multiple times, has discarded the American people. Please remind Americans that Trump is a convicted felon 34 times and that Donald Trump lies always." I think you just did, Tim. Thanks so much. Tina also chimes in on my comments about the idea that, giving people a sharp stick could be, we could meet the level of the right to bear arms. But she responds, but you can't rapidly kill many humans with a sharp stick or cause mass destruction. Very, very true. So I wanted to get some of those emails. If you've got a thought, a question, comment, I want to hear it. I want to chime in. But this holiday for me, and I go back to where we started, what it's meant in my lifetime. And I hope today we sit back and we think about the advancements that organized labor has gotten, the things that we take for granted. I was telling my kids the other day that I remember a day when the 8-hour day was sacrosanct. There was none of this 40-hour work week stuff. You got paid overtime after 8. If they made you stay after 8 hours, you got paid overtime. It was the contract. And I still work under a contract that says that. Very fortunate, as I've said. Now, because of this Project 2025, they want to move it not just from the 8 that I understand and the 40 that as a society we've agreed on, but to 160 hours a month. Which means you can work 160 hours in the first week and, well, we'll just, you're good. We'll just leave you off for the rest of the month. And it's that kind of situation where I know they say it'll be voluntary. Is it ever? Can any working person really look me in the face and say, oh, no, the majority of employers would be just fine in giving you that choice? We know in the real world that that's not how it works, and that power only accedes to power, and that the only way workers get that step forward, the only way that people are able to, like I'm able to say that I've never taken an unsafe truck on the road, I've never knowingly worked in unsafe working conditions, and when I have been confronted with it, I've had the ability to step up and say, no. I've had the ability to demand action. And that's the power, really the power of being a union member. And outside of that, it's the empowerment that comes with being a good citizen. And on this Labor Day, what I'm hoping people take from it is not just, hey, we had a barbecue, it was a good weekend, the weather was nice, got to see the kids and the family. But what it really means is that our lives were made better. And as workers are organizing all across this country, and we're seeing stories all over the place of people finding their voice, rediscovering solidarity. As that's happening, it's not just about wages, hours, conditions. It's about a future. It's about opportunity. It's about hope. It's about having a better place, not just for ourselves, but for our children, and leaving them opportunity. It's about much more than just a paycheck. It's what that paycheck says and means. It's not just showing up at a job. It's about having some dignity in that work, and that work being rewarded. It's just not just the dollars and cents on a paycheck. It's the pride with I know I am making a better life for myself and my family. I know I've got opportunities because of this. And the pride of knowing that I can change things. And this is what really scares corporate America. It's not really so much about the money. It's more about this idea of workers being empowered to go, wait a second, billions of dollars in stock buybacks to raise the price of stocks to feed the CEO and his kids more. How about us? How about the wealth that we create through our labor being compensated at a higher level? And that's why we're seeing what looks like a record number of strikes across this country. Corporate America has gotten used to going, hey, I'll take it all, please. And now workers are going, we want some of it. Because we want the hope, the opportunity. We want the better lives. We want the American dream. I want to hear your thoughts. Tell me your Labor Day stories. Tell me what unions mean to you, what labor means to you, and what the holiday means outside of barbecues and baseball. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Miss any portion of the program, grab the podcast wherever you find your favorite podcast. You'll find ours. And as always, thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.